Okay, grade 11s, let's quickly go through the memo. The first question asked was for the gradient of CD. That will be that gradient right there. You had both coordinates, you all answered it pretty well. Substitute into the formula and you get the answer. The next one was the inclination angle alpha. So you had the gradient, you press shift tan 3/2. The question said that it must be rounded off to 1 decimal. Some of you missed that, but then you just write the answer 56,3. So the next question, I just quickly want to show you on the sketch. They asked you to find the value of y to show that it's 8. So what you had to do is you had to realize that because this is a rectangle, these two sides are perpendicular to each other. So you have CD's gradient, it's 3/2, you calculated it at 1.1. So what you should have done is you must steal this gradient and use it with AD. And AD is going to be 3/2 swapped around with a negative. Then you've got the answer of the gradient of AD. You have 3 of the 4 coordinates of the gradient, and then you can calculate y. Some of you stole the gradient perfectly, and then you found the equation, and then you substituted 4 into the place of x. That would be fine as well. So just to show you, I said, alright, the gradient of CD times the gradient of AD must be -1 because CD is perpendicular to AD because it's a rectangle. Therefore, the gradient of AD is -2/3. I use that as my answer for the gradient formula, and then I do the inverse with the gradient, and I find y to be equal to 8. 4 marks there. Right, the next one. I asked you to find the midpoint of BD. Now, if you look at the sketch, you didn't have the coordinate of B. So some of you went and found the coordinate of B. That was fine as well. What I did is I found the midpoint of AC. And then because it's a rectangle, you must know that the diagonals bisect each other. Therefore, the midpoint of AC is going to be the same as the midpoint of BD. So I calculated the midpoint of AC and then just said that BD's midpoint would be the same. So I'm saying the midpoint of AC is equal to the midpoint of BD because the diagonals bisect. I calculated the midpoint of AC, 7/2 and 4, and then I said so the midpoint of BD will also be 7/2 and 4. If you use this method without finding the value of B, you had to give that reason that the diagonals bisect each other. The next question was the length of AB. Same setup. If you had the coordinate of B, it's fine. You can just calculate the length of AB. But it wasn't necessary to find B. You can calculate the length of CD because you have both coordinates. And because it's a rectangle, we know that the length of AB is the same as the length of CD. Therefore, what I said is AB is equal to CD. The opposite sides of a rectangle are equal. And then I calculated the length of CD, substitute into my equation. I found it to be 2√13, and then I said so AB is equal to 2√13. Once again, using this method, you'd have to say that the opposite sides are equal. Then the last one, if you look on the sketch, it was given that ACF is 80 degrees. So you have alpha, you calculated it at 1.2, it was 56,3. So therefore, that small angle right there will be 23,7. It's 80 degrees minus 56,3. And that angle there and theta will be the same size because it's alternate angles because those lines are parallel. So I said 80 degrees minus 56,3 to get the 23,7. That's the small angle. And then I said theta is going to be the same because it's alternate angles. Okay, let's go to question 2. I'm going to take this one off. We don't have a sketch for question 2. So the first question, they asked you to write down the equations of the asymptotes Once again, don't write P equal, don't write Q equal. It must be an equation, therefore it's X equal or Y equal. The reason that it's X equal to 2 is X minus 2. They're on the same side of the equal to sign, so that negative 2 has to go to the other side. It becomes positive 2. 1 is on this side and Y is on the other side. So therefore it was not necessary for that sign to change. And then you've got your two asymptote equations. Next one, 2.2, finding the value of A. You substituted the point M that was given, 2 into the place of Y, 1 into the place of X. And then the mistake that most of you made, you said you took that 2 and you subtracted 1 from it. This is a term with a variable, that's a constant term, so you cannot subtract these from each other. This negative 1 has to go over to the other side and it becomes 3 over 2 when you divide with that 2 there. So it's 2 marks to get to 3 over 2. 2.3, find the x and the y intercepts, the coordinates of it. Finding the y coordinate, you guys did that well, make x 0. So that's negative a half plus 1, you get a half, and then you must write it as a coordinate, otherwise you lose the mark. The x coordinate, you make y 0, that plus 1 goes over, it becomes minus 1, then you swap the answer and the whole denominator without changing any signs, and then the negative 2 goes over, it becomes plus 2. You write the coordinate 1 and 0. Then drawing the graphs with the hyperbola. You guys drew that hyperbola so nicely, you did well. Now you must just learn the other graphs as well. So starting with the hyperbola, put in your asymptotes, y equal to 1, x equal to 2. Your first intercept, that one is 1 and 0. The other one was 0.5. And then you could draw your hyperbola there and you just copy the form on the other side. Just check there on your graph. Some of you, I told you guys that you're only getting marks for the shape and the coordinates and the asymptotes. But some of you draw this graph like almost like a semicircle. It must look like a hyperbola still, okay? So it doesn't have to be perfect, but just let it look like a hyperbola. If you did it, you'll know I'm talking about you because you will see it there. Alright, the exponential function, many of you drew it as a straight line. You guys need to learn it as well. Okay, so it's got a asymptote at y equal to negative 1. I calculated the y-intercept by making x 0. So it becomes 1. It's 3 over 2 times 1 is 3 over 2. 3 over 2 minus 1 gives you a half. So it also intersected with the hyperbola right there. And then you must know the shape. Remember, it's about the base. The base is a whole number, and therefore the shape will go like that. Okay. Oh, the last one was the domain. Remember, domain is on x values. I saw that many of you knew it well. X is the element of real numbers, and then you exclude the asymptote x not equal to 2. Okay, the last question. Let me just quickly get it side by side. Sorry. Okay. Alright. You had to show that the equation is negative 2x squared plus 4x plus 6. Alright. I'm going to say this again. When we find the equation of a parabola, there are two ways. It's either with the PQ form, that one there, or the other one is when you have the two x-intercepts. So it's x minus x1, x minus x2. This one you use when you've got two x-intercepts. This one you use when you've got the turning point. So if you look at the graph, can you all see that you've got the turning point? So therefore that turning point of 1 and 8, you substitute into the place of P and Q. Q you substitute as it is, 8 into the place of Q. And P is not going to be plus 1, it gets a negative because remember it's negative P. And then you need a coordinate for the x and the y value. I used that 0 and 6. You could have used the 3 and 0 of B as well. Put it into the place of x and y, and then I calculated it. That gives me 1 plus 8, and the 8 goes over, it subtracts, and then you get a to be negative 2. You substitute it back, leaving your x and y variable, and then you calculate it. You just simplify the equation. So it's x squared, that one times 2, that one times itself. Multiply the negative 2 into it, and then your trinomial is negative 2x squared plus 4x plus 6. Now I just quickly want to show you if you used the 2x intercept. So some learners said that because b is 3 and the turning point is at 1, they knew that that turning point is the axis of symmetry. In other words, from 3 to 1 is going to be 2 jumps, and that is the middle. So therefore a is going to be 2 jumps to the left, and that's how they knew that a is negative 1. If you did that, you must just tell me from the axis of symmetry or from the graph I counted, just indicate that you got a to be negative 1 in a specific way. Don't just substitute it when it's not given. You have to show how you get it, or explain how you got it. Okay, so that was that one, 6 marks. The next one where I asked you to calculate the gradient where x is 1 and x is 3. So I caught you out there. Many of you just used the 1 and the 3. If you look at the graph, the sketch, where with f of x, where there's a 1, it's the coordinate 1 and 8. Where the x is 3, it was the coordinate 3 and 0. So when you have when you want to calculate the gradient, we need 2 coordinates, and you just had to look for the other y. If, for instance, it wasn't given on the sketch, then you'd have to substitute y into the equation, x into the equation, and that 3 into the place of x into the equation to get 8 and 0. If you did that, you'd also get 8 and 0, but it wasn't necessary. You got the coordinates on the graph. Okay, and then just substitute into the gradient formula. You'll see I should have swapped those two around, and then you get an answer of negative 4. Just 3 marks there. Then the next one, find the coordinates of the point of intersection of C. That one right there. You must know when we want to find a point of intersection, we let the two equations be equal to each other. Simplify to get your trinomial, and then you got your two answers, a half and 3. This is the same as the simultaneous equations that we did in the first term. This is just, you have a graph as well, so you can literally see what that point is where they are equal to each other. Then you find x to be a half, x to be 3, substitute into either the straight line or the quadratic function, and then you find c, the coordinate of c, to be a half and 7 over 2. The reason I didn't use that x equal to 3 is because that was obviously that point B. So c was the one that's a half. And then the last question, I asked you to explain what transformation happened when it's negative f of x. Now you remember that I said f of x is y. So it's literally that I put a negative in front of the y. So when we spoke about reflections, we said that when it's a reflection in the x-axis, you put a negative in front of the y. When it's a reflection in the y-axis, you put a negative in front of the x. So literally all you had to say is it's a reflection in the x-axis because of the negative in front of y. Some of you wrote out a whole paragraph. If in your paragraph it came down to it that you're reflecting in the x-axis, you got the mark, but that was all that was necessary, reflection in the x-axis. Okay, and that's it.